Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to episode 44 of the Survival Project. Guest today is Seamus McAuley. A few years ago, Shay was living what many people describe as a dream. He was the CEO of a NASDAQ-listed pharmaceutical company, traveling constantly for work, really successful guy, and building an incredible career. But then, at just 47 years old, everything changed. One ordinary morning, Shay suffered a massive heart attack. His heart stopped. He was out. But as much as that was the moment that changed everything, this episode isn't really about the heart attack. It's about what happens when life strips away every title, every achievement, every distinction, leaving me with one question: what actually matters? So let's get into it. Shay, welcome to Survival Project. It's good to have you here, man.
Johnny, absolutely delighted to be here, and thanks for the invite. If I can just say, I genuinely mean this. I have a lot of admiration for the podcast, and I find it quite inspirational. So the bar is high. I hope I can meet the bar. So delighted to be here. Thank you.
Time to raise that ceiling. Let's go.
No pressure.
But no, I really appreciate those words, and I've previously listened to you on another podcast, Jack's podcast, and
Yep.
on that podcast, you said that your wife says that you're a hard man to keep alive, but you counter that by saying that you're a hard man to kill.
In my world, it's all about perspective.
Yeah,
Sure.
that really sets the tone for my next question. So I just want to, I suppose, dive into your story a little bit. So could you take us back to the day of your heart attack?
Yeah, sure. It's of course, as many people listening will probably have similar dates emblazoned on their brain or their calendar, as the case may be. Mine was the 23rd of February, so it'll be 3 years ago, just over 3 years, 3 years and 2 months ago. And the reason that date is so fresh, as it were, is as you know from the previous podcast, I did a high rocks on that day. 2 years from the date of the heart attack, I did a high rock. So it's kind of emblazoned on the brain. But it was a Thursday morning, and Johnny, I was at the time I was the CEO of a NASDAQ in America, pharmaceutical company, and I suppose I found myself in a bit of the what I call it, the cliche, the corporate cliche. You know, I was 47 years of age, and you could on the surface say, you know, God, didn't you do very well? But I was chasing, we'll call it the dream, just chasing work and flat out traveling a lot. And a lot of pressure, just a lot of any public company. The job doesn't really become about necessarily the company ethos. For me, it was pharmaceuticals, but it becomes about share price, and it becomes about public markets and all that pressure and money and all the stuff that you imagine it to be. Gordon Gekko and Wall Street and greed is good and all that good stuff. And so I was traveling a lot and back and forth, and fundamentally our operations were in New Mexico. We had offices in Fort Lauderdale, and then a lot of plane journeys in between. And so that Thursday morning, I was actually due to leave to go to America, and I was flying out that afternoon, I think 1 o'clock or something like that. So just a lot of this is serendipity, Johnny, if I'm honest with you, because that morning I kind of I happened to wake up and begin to get ready in order to get on the road to get to the airport in time for my flight. And it just so happened that coincided with Lee, my wife, and the kids kind of doing their thing, their morning routine to get to work and school. Again, that wasn't planned. That was just the way it was, and that's the time of my flight. That will become important in a second when you kind of understand that perhaps the heart attack for me could have happened half an hour later when I was in the car, or 6 hours later when I was in the airport, or 8 hours later when I was in the middle of the Atlantic somewhere, or perhaps on the other side in the States, and all that might have brought. But a lot of this was serendipity. So I kind of woke up that morning and just normal routine. I kind of woke up and went into the bathroom, brush my teeth and get ready and do all that stuff. I didn't make it that far, as in I didn't really get any further than that. I went into the bathroom and just having got up out of bed, I kind of went, I don't feel good. And that's a very generalized description of that, because in fact, I didn't have any symptoms in the lead up to it, but it's just a generalized feeling of I am not well, something not right. And I turned on my heel to go, and I said, I'm going to have a lie down in the bed. And I walked out of the ensuite, and I'm telling you this story after the fact, but I collapsed at Lee's feet. And so she describes it after the fact, and she said, I thought you were coming in, and she said your head was kind of down, and I thought you were kind of going to do one of those, oh, I'm so tired, I have to go to work, give me a hug type of thing. Instead, I kind of collapsed in a heap at her feet. And again, second story, Johnny, being from Lee's perspective, I was white, I was blue, my lips were blue, and clearly something not right. I was oblivious. I was just obviously not there and gone. And I suppose Lee's a psychologist, and I'm not sure why I say that. I think she's well primed, I suppose, for scenarios. You know, she's very, very grounded in that sense. And so I think still panic ensued and a lot of what's going on, ambulances and so on. I kind of came to And all I'll say is it was very obvious immediately that there was something really dramatically wrong, and I was, my speech was slurred, not slurred in an obvious way. Just I was slow, and I was quite jaded and a little bit phased. And so, of course, again, Lee's story, she's like, oh, God, has he had a stroke? What's going on? Is something bad happening here? Anyway, where we live in the city, in Galway City, is quite close to the hospital. And to their absolute credit, again, this is a rough time frame, but I'd say within about 7 or 8 minutes, the ambulance were at the front door, which all of this contributes to a very positive story in the sense that it could have gone very differently, I suppose. But they arrived and on the scene, and they kind of took over. And what's interesting is that at that time, a lot of my vitals had kind of, we'll say, returned to normal, but there was nothing obvious. When they kind of plugged me in, there was nothing that they could point at and say, actually, you're having a heart attack right now. So, that's a problem, In fact, what instead happened was my right coronary artery, which I found out after the fact, was 100% blocked. So no blood through that artery was getting to the cardiac muscle. And isn't the body a wonderful thing? Because in the meantime, my body, my heart, had found a way round. It had recruited other blood vessels. Those other blood vessels were feeding my cardiac muscle, which leads into the fact that I had no symptoms. I had no obvious symptoms. That's why I had no chest pain. I had no shortness of breath, because these collaterals, is what they're called, were then feeding the cardiac muscle. But I suppose post my first kind of heart attack, then that had kicked in again, and then my vitals had returned to some degree of normality, right? And so they were kind of looking at me to kind of go, oh, you're a bit strange. What's going on with you? And I was like, I don't know. And so off they go. I was on the third floor. I'm a solid lad, and so getting me down from the third floor was no mean feat. And they did that all very professionally and perfectly. And I go to the hospital, and again, they kind of had the conversation saying, oh, you're a bit weird. Your blood pressure's okay. Your ECG is fine. Your cardiac rhythm's fine. And what do you think? And I was going, I don't know, but what I'll tell you is I have a crushing weight on my chest and I have pain down my arm. And they went, okay, off we go. So they took me into the cardiac cath lab to do an angiogram, an emergency angiogram. And during that procedure, and they that's when they uncovered the blockage, and they kind of score it, as it were, and they kind of give it a number and say, well, okay, you're 100% blocked. And just as they were doing that then and working to clear that blockage, and then they were going to put a stent in, I arrested again. And so they came and they did the shocks and the paddles, and it was all very ER. And
took the words out of my mouth. I was going to say, really your job, yeah.
Right. No, I say that. TV. I was completely oblivious. I wasn't there. I was gone. I was checked out and had flatlined and done the whole bit. And so a lot of this is me relaying the story after the fact, But as I experienced it, I was gone, man. I wasn't aware of any of that. Only when I came back to the ward was I then informed, you arrested and so on. So as you can imagine, all of that, all of the fact that it was a heart attack, all of the fact that you arrested, and I did have this conversation. I remember having this conversation with Lee going, I have no idea how this happened. And then, when you reflect, I think about maybe 2 weeks or maybe 3 weeks before the heart attack, I did 9 flights in 10 days in the States, right? So I did like Dublin, New York, and then not small flights. I did like Fort Lauderdale, and then Texas and Seattle, and like crisscrossing the country. Yeah. And then you start to go, oh, well, actually maybe, and you're reflecting on that journey, kind of going, oh, well, that's how that happened. And so no surprise. I think all of that, like, it culminated in something that in actual fact, number one, it wasn't expected, because I promise you, I mean this, I had no warning signs. Maybe on reflection in the weeks to follow, I was exhausted. I felt really tired. My body felt really tired in the lead up to the heart attack. But I just put that down to schedule, travel, jet lag, time zones. It didn't really connect.
Yeah. Because I literally, from your initial, when you spoke at the start, I have the word hectic written down here. Like that, it just sums up completely. Yeah.
Literally hectic. And I think to that point, you're lost. Sometimes you just, in life, you get lost in what you're doing, and it was hectic, but you just adapt and you overcome in your head. You kind of go, I'll just keep going. I'll do what I'm doing, and off I go. And it's often, I suppose, Julie, one of the features that I have found, particularly compelling in your work here and your guests' work is that when you're met with a chronic disease, and I know mine's not a chronic disease, mine was quite acute, but with any condition that has an impact to you, you keep going until you can go no longer. And actually you hit a wall somewhere and you kind of go, "Oh, what do I do now?" And I think that's what the heart attack represented to me. It was a wall at speed going, you're on the wrong path. You're on the wrong road here, and you need to change. And so all of those moments of serendipity and luck, whereby the timing of it, how close we were to the hospital, I guess how fortunate I was that maybe I had developed those collaterals and they kind of kicked in again and allowed me to. And I did, when I did arrest, I arrested on the table in the hospital with all the professionals around me. If you're going to do all of those things, those are the times to do it, right? And I'd love to tell you that was all a master plan, and I thought every one of
Genius.
that, genius level activity. All of that was luck. All of that was fortune, and I suppose, for me, that was the reflection post the heart attack. That was the points to reflect upon, which is, God, I was really quite lucky there, and in actual fact, I don't think I'll leave it to luck moving forward. Is the point? I'll maybe try and do something here
Yeah.
to avoid it fundamentally.
Yeah, we can ride our luck a little bit too long. And from your story there, I've written down here pieces of the puzzle, and it just seemed that for the jigsaw of Shay to be here today, a lot of pieces had to fit in on the board just on that little journey there. Like even the fact that Lee was still there, your flight was the right time, the fact of the location of where you live,
Right.
and even that, like, Lee is a very intelligent, very level woman, that she had the wherewithal to take the right action in the moment and get you the help that you needed. Like there's a lot of things that moved there. And then of course you were in the right place at the right time when the second heart attack came. I know you've mentioned me before that you technically died for a short period.
Yeah.
That's, I suppose, essentially, what was that experience like?
I suppose there's two ways to look at it, Julie. There was no Elvis. I didn't see Elvis, and I didn't see the pearly white gates, or there was no experience. Now, by that, Julie, the important part behind that was that once I died and I flatlined, I'm not necessarily sure that I was gone for long enough to if anything was going to happen, to allow it to occur, because I was surrounded by professionals. I think really quite quickly I got the paddles and I think it was two interventions, and I kind of came back again. And so there's a technicality to the death in that sense. Again, there was no floating bodies. I didn't have any of that. And that's not to say in any way and cast judgment on that and kind of go, and therefore conclude that there's nothing on the other side. That's not what that's about. But there was the aftermath of that. Really, there was the realization of going, actually, how fragile is this experience, and this awareness and this consciousness. How do I protect that? I mean this honestly, Johnny, I had an overriding sense I haven't done the things I need to do. I haven't ticked the boxes here, and if I'm honest with you, I felt like I'd probably been wasting my time. I was relatively successful in business, Johnny, and you could say, and maybe at a point I did say, you've done really well. I had this overriding sense immediately of going, that's not what it's about. That's not important. Here are the things that are important, and here are the things that you need to do in order to get to the point where you can leave happily, if I can put it that way, or with some sense of achievement or fulfillment. And so I would say whilst I didn't have that experience of death or there was no light at the end of the tunnel or any of that stuff, I think mine was probably a technicality in terms of death, flatlining and there. But actually, it was the aftermath that was more the awareness and what that impact that had on me personally after the fact that was probably more impactful to me and has actually been more meaningful to me than had I had a heavenly host guiding me towards the pearly gates. I've probably taken more out of the experience after the fact than necessarily the experience of it.
Yeah, we've kind of touched on it there, but it brings me to my next question, that in the aftermath of everything that you experienced, what fears came up for you, and how has it kind of shaped how you've moved forward?
So I think we all do this. We all have masks that we put on, and I don't say that negatively. I say it positively. We have to be in the world, and in being in the world, you're a dad, you're a husband, you're a brother, a son, or whatever. You're a worker, whatever your work is. You put on that mask, and I suppose for me, the things that were vital were kids knocking around, and in actual fact, exclusive for you, Johnny. No one knows this. No one has heard what I'm about to tell you. But in the immediate aftermath, lying on the bed of the heart attack, when I was kind of brought back, and after having died, I recorded messages to the kids, and on Lee's phone, and it's amazing how lucid you are and how aware you are of the imminence or the importance of something. And I was kind of going, give me your phone. I want to record these messages. And Lee just gave me her phone, and she left, and she said, okay, Grant. And so I've recorded a message to them that sounds dramatic, because I'd kind of come back going, am I going to rest in 10 minutes? Like, is this it? Is this how life is now? And so Lee will tell you, she has the recordings on the phone. She'd never listened to them either. And so they're there. And I think in many ways that's a gift, because I was given the opportunity, I suppose, to say what I felt was important to say, to convey how much I loved them and how important they were and how proud I was of them, and all of those things that as a dad, you need to say to your kids, and that your kids want to hear. And so I suppose that never manifested itself in terms of them hearing the message. It allows me now to live with that at the center of what it is that I do, if that makes sense. So that fundamentally was a huge shift. Don't get me wrong, I had a great relationship with my kids beforehand. It's not like I didn't speak to them or any of that stuff, but it shifted the emphasis for me, and it shifted the focus for me. And the same, in terms of relationships in general, then those are the crucial ones, those are the vital ones. But relationships in general, I have always had lots of friends, I suppose, as I've gone through life, and lots of people that primarily went drinking with. And I don't know why I had a heart attack. I'm joking. But buddies and people that you're friendly with and so on. But again, there's a level of intimacy, if I can use that word, but closeness and bonds that you have. And I think there's a realization for me, the whole experience has really brought me to the realization that the bonds that tie us together as individuals, as to who my bonds are with my wife, with my kids, with my family, and with my dear friends, my really close friends, those are more defining than what my job title is, or what I do or where I do it at. Fundamentals actually are the bit that drive you. And I was talking about this recently, actually. It's very rare that when you think of somebody that that's passed away, that you kind of go, well, what did they do? What was their job? It seems secondary. You may know, oh, he was a doctor or he was a whatever. But it's irrelevant. It doesn't mean anything. You think fundamentally about who was that person and what did they do, and what were they about? What were their values? And I really genuinely, and I mean this honestly, I think of the heart attack now as a gift. It sounds so trite, and it sounds so,
I get it, yeah.
Right, but do you know what I mean? It sounds so TED Talk, right? But I really do. I see it as a gift, right? Because in many ways, I had the opportunity to then manifest that in my life, to allow that to come through, and re-emphasize and refocus on those bits. And has the heart attack changed me? On the outside, probably not so much. Lost some weight, have less hair, and my beard's a bit grayer. But fundamentally, on the outside, if you were looking in, not really. No, still the same person in that sense. But the inside, the intrinsic part has changed, and where I drive my value from, what I try to manifest in the world for my people, for my crew, that has changed. And I immediately gave up my job. And again, it was a big job. I say that as if to go, that's a big thing. It was the easiest thing in the world. I was like, I'm not doing that anymore. That's the end of that, and goodbye. And so, I think that's why I look at it as a gift. You've had the time it taught me something. And I think for me, that's the real challenge. Whether that's a heart attack or whether it's a chronic condition, it's the lessons that it can teach you that you can apply to your life that actually make it a better experience for you.
Yeah, it's so beautiful what you said there, because we have, I suppose, our village around us, which would be our family and our friends and everything. And on the day that we go, do we want them to remember us as the entrepreneur, or do we want them to remember us for the impression that we left on them, besides the label that we had to become to move through life? And it's so beautiful to have that true perspective. And as you said, a gift. Because if you can look at something bad that happens in your life and flip it completely on its head and say, okay, what is this going to teach me, and what do I become from it? And that's exactly what you've done. You're like, I've seen you in the gym, you've gone back and you've done a high rocks again, even though they might be bad for people's health, judging by your experience with the first one. But
well, I was thinking about this as well, because it's not my fault. It's Connell Dennedy's entirely his fault. He made me do it. And he somehow magically put the idea in my head. But what you said there is really important, because I had spent a career, I think. And look, my start in life, I had a bit of a background. My dad was a drinker, and it was less than ideal, put it that way. And so I kind of ran away from that scenario when I was quite young, and I kind of trained as a nurse and worked in ICU for a period of time. And only after that fact did I then join industry and kind of cut my teeth in industry and this diverse career. I've done a lot of different things over time. But the point is, I've always had a mentality that says, how can you take a bad situation and find the best outcome for that bad situation, right? So it still might be a shitty outcome, as it were, but how can I make it the best shitty outcome that I can possibly make, right? And so I've always had that drive. And I think in work, that took me then to the NASDAQ and took me to the CEO of a NASDAQ. And all of that's fascinating. And it's a really,
The story in itself, yeah.
literally in itself. And it's fascinating and it's all of that kind of good stuff. But it's driven from the same place externally, as in, how do I make the best situation externally? So here I am, I have a company and I want to sell it. How do I do that? And I apply masses amount of energy, masses amount of activity and brain power and networking and all that kind of good stuff. And then you get to, you achieve it and you succeed and you kind of go, hey, look what I did. Actually, are you any further forward? You fundamentally, yes, people might define it and go, oh, look what you did. Yeah, literally killed me. It literally killed me. Define that as a good outcome? Not really. And so one ways this is manifested for me is, so I'm a dad, and collectively, like, there's 4 kids there, right? And I think there are generic things that all parents do, right? You provide a home, you provide clothing and food and support and help with Irish grinds, all that kind of good stuff, right? Right? Yeah, really
all
important.
that penance, yeah.
All that pain, right? All that difficulty, right? But actually, where the real, for me, this is my experience of it, where the real joy comes from in parenting is, each child has their own personalization, right? So they have their own individual personality and their own path to follow. And what I found really, really rewarding over the last number of years, as I have had the opportunity to focus on that, is that as the individual personalities start to manifest, it's my ability to focus on their individual desires and their individual personalities and pathways. And so that's, for me, where a real relationship comes from. Not to say that the generic piece and the clothing on the back, but that's just part of the gig. That's what you do. It's the real personalization as, well, you want to go that way. Well, how do I help you with that? And how do I support you with that in a non-judgmental way, in the sense that, well, it's your way. How do I support that? And actually, there's a real closeness or a real bond that comes from that. And there's a lesson in that, Jenny, which is, I think for each of us individually, we all have to walk our path. It is what it is. We're here. We have to live to the best of our ability with whatever cards we're dealt. But actually, what makes the journey really pleasurable is the people, as you say, the village that you have with you and the crew that you have with you. But too often we forget that, and too often it becomes the awareness of, well, you're just there, you'll just do that. And actually, there's no credence given or no time to appreciate. And I think that if I can define it, what I've done is I've slowed down. I've had the ability to look around me and really, really be grateful for what I have. And even that in itself is a gift, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. Beautiful. Like the ability and the knowledge to know that you have to slow down. A guy on the podcast previously, Ron O'Brien, said you got to slow down to catch up. And it has always stuck with me. But I just want to circle back. First of all, I want to thank you so much for sharing that about the recordings on the phone, because that's such power in that. And knowing that you were nearly thinking you were at the end and you had to do this, you had to leave your message, you had one chance. I know myself in my own life, I wrote a letter lying in a hospital bed that I left underneath the cup thinking I won't be awake to pass this on. So I understand, I really understand the weight of that. And you've dived into your family there and how you possibly weren't there to be the guide for your children, which is a really, really scary thought, because as every father, he wants to be there to be the shaper, not just to put the clothes on the back, but also to guide the mind and everything. Correct. So of course, now, do you feel a responsibility now to look after your health, obviously not just for yourself, but for your family too?
Unequivocally. And back to my wife, in Hard to Kill, I'm regularly reminded that, actually you need to make sure that you're here for the good duration. Just recently we celebrated my in-laws, Lee's parents' 50th wedding anniversary, and there's 2 bits to that. Today's world, getting to 50 in a marriage is an achievement in and of itself, right? Yeah. But also that longevity and that time spent and that accumulation of experience, and that's all the way through to grandkids, all of the really, really rich stuff. And actually I feel that responsibility to make sure that I'm here to help, right? Fundamentally, but life lessons. And I'm like, any opportunity I get, Joey, to give a life lesson, and my kids will be telling me something. They'll be saying, oh, well, I have to do this thing. I said, that sounds like you need a life lesson. Let's go. We'll make it stop. But they're getting them, and that's all there is to it. And so, but you want to be there for that. Genuinely, there's a richness to that, and there's a real depth to that. And if I'm honest, I want that depth. I want to experience that. I want to be a grandparent. Not yet. I'm a young fella. All right. Message to all the kids, not yet, right? But you want that depth and you want that piece. So you have a responsibility because you want to contribute to that and you want to ensure that you facilitate that. But also there's a selfish, I don't mean it in a narcissistic way. I mean, you want that richness and depth and that volume of experience, because I firmly believe, you're not really a religious person necessarily, but I firmly believe a big piece of what we're here to do is garner those experiences and actually, conclude those experiences for ourselves, and however that contributes to the bigger picture. That's another podcast on its own right. But again, it's experiencing that, and so that you can contribute that, and I think that the awareness of that and the consciousness of that is very, very important. So unequivocally, and I have to say, just there's the experience of it, Johnny, as well. It's nice to feel well. The experience of feeling well, as a contrast to feeling unwell, and I know from your podcast and just from how you share, you've had those moments of pain and darkness and hardship, and the contrast between those moments and just the normal day to day of feeling well and feeling vibrant and feeling healthy, if I can use the word.
Yeah.
And it's literally true. You cannot buy it. Money cannot buy it. So it's something to strive for. It's something to achieve. And if that's what the effort now goes towards, that's where the effort should go. I'm always, I can't help myself to, I can't, an opportunity, I can't pass an opportunity by from a business point of view. We'll do that. Let's do that. Before you know it, this time next year, Rodney will be millionaires. Let's go. But I need the intellectual stimulation that comes with that. But I've also moderated that significantly to give it its place and to give it its level of importance. And for me, that wellness and that responsibility to self and to others, man, I take that really seriously now, and I feel it really acutely.
Absolutely. Like it carries a new perspective, new knowledge, and the self-awareness to know actually what you like to do as well. Like obviously your business and your work was having such an effect on your life, but you do like it and you do thrive in it, to know that you still want to do it in a different capacity that's not going to affect your possible home life or possible future life as guiding your children, as you mentioned. There's a Naval Ravikant says, now I always butcher his name, maybe that's not how you say it, but someone who is happy wants 10,000 things. Someone who is sick only wants one thing. And when you understand that without health, nothing else exists, you realize the appreciation and how much work you need to do to maintain that. Because sometimes we can get into a state of unwell where we're in it for so long, we think this is our baseline and think this is where we are moving from, until maybe, the body keeps the score. The body suddenly fails and you realize, oh my God, something was brewing for a long time before it happened. I know you mentioned you didn't have any real previous symptoms, but obviously there was a whole lifestyle that was going on that possibly led to the issue. But then when that breaks, snaps, whole perspective changes, life changes, and you have to dive back in. And I know, as I would never say that you are a surface level person, but obviously when health issues come, it means we dive even further down into the surface to see what's going on under here, what am I made of, and who do I want to be moving forward. So no, I really appreciate you sharing all that with me, because it's such an in-depth look into it.
But Joe, you hit on something that's really important there, right? And so this is going to sound really philosophical and very deep and meaningful, right? But here we go, right? You said 10,000 things, right?
Let's go.
Right. So the Tao Te Ching, it talks about, in Lao Tzu, talks about the 10,000 things, and it talks generically about the 10,000 things, right? So in the narrative of the Tao Te Ching, which is the way, which is literally the way, is what it means when it translates. And then this was some philosophy to say this is how people should live. This is the ideal way to live. And when it was comparing and contrasting what people do, it said people's emphasis is on the 10,000 things. Now, what that's meant to translate as is not specifically 10,000 things, but it's everything else. In our modern world, it's the price of fuel, it's the cost of living, it's the how busy I am, I'm scrolling, doom scrolling. It's your mind is on everything else, and I think acute episode or indeed a chronic condition that has acute episodes, it very quickly focuses your mind to say those 10,000 things are irrelevant, and actually it brings a great insight and a great awareness to the appreciation of what the likes of the Tao Te Ching is actually saying, which all of it, we tend to do. I have a great leveler. I used to work in intensive care, and It was in the Royal Victoria in Belfast, and it was a regional intensive care. So we had some serious conditions, and of course, unfortunately, my age, I was still in the troubles, and so there were lots of bombs and bullets and all of that stuff that goes with it.
Yeah.
But it used to be, people used to still say to me, "Do you miss nursing?" And my answer is no, not really. But what I do miss is the perspective that it gave you, because you used to go in to work in the morning and say, moaning about whatever you're moaning about, my electric bill, my car needs a service, I need 2 new tires, whatever, the 100 things that we could all be thinking about, and the stuff that pisses us off. And actually you go in and you're looking at somebody who's in a bed, and I remember nursing a guy who went to a hole in the wall in Belfast, and he I can't remember specifically, I think he was about 28 or 29, something like that. And he went to get cash out, and somebody decided to ram raid the hole in the wall, just didn't let him get out of the way. So they crashed the car in when he was there. So he had a C4 fracture, which effectively meant from halfway down, he couldn't feel anything. And he had young kids. He had 4 young kids at the time. And I was on night duty at the time. I was tired. I was a bit just jaded and whatever. And I was moaning about something, like whatever it was. Get to the point, I can't even remember. But it's a great perspective where you kind of suddenly realize, going, I don't have any problems. Look at what this is. Look at what this guy is faced with for the rest of his days. And, the old saying of "this too shall pass," with everything of the 10,000 things that we think about and that distract us, they will all pass, and they will all, in a week's time, you'll be going, what was I thinking about there? It becomes so irrelevant, but we get so caught up in them in the moment. So you just, when you say that 10,000 things, I think it's a great perspective to have, which is, remember fundamentally who and what you are and where the importance lies. The other things are just distractions. They are what they are. And that's the easiest thing to say on a podcast and sound very, very together. I appreciate that. But it is that perspective, and it's reminding yourself of that perspective sometimes.
Complete. It's absolute fact. And we can get nearly into a conspiracy theory and I go this, but the modern world is designed to draw peace away from us because, we're worried about fuel. We're worried about how much money we have to make, buy a house, mortgage. Can I afford to put food on the table? When really and truly, these things should be kind of the baseline things that we have as a base to move from, rather than these fear kind of state that we kind of have to live in. But no, I'll start rambling now if I go down that road.
But you're right. But if you I couldn't agree with you more. But actually, if you bring it back to what it is, right, it's a differentiation between ego, and not ego as an egotistical viewpoint, but that notion of self, that notion of identification with a part of you which is just the voice in your head, right? And actually getting lost in that voice and identifying exclusively with that voice. And I think I was quite fortunate in a sense, Julie, with it, that I was able to take some time after the heart attack. Not everybody is in that position, and I was able to take some time off work and reflect and do all of those kind of things. Somebody else in my situation could have went, well, I have to get back to work because I have a mortgage and I have this, and it has a direct impact on what they do and how they recover. But for me, I very quickly learned to go, let me cut that bit of not cut it out, but let me learn to disassociate from that and kind of go, hang on a second, let me push that back a little bit. Verbalizing that as if it's the easiest thing in the world to do. I'm fully mindful that it's not.
Yeah.
Like, just turn it off. Just don't listen to it. It's fine. It's easy. Just bang, done. Not like that. But actually, again, that's something to maybe think about and something to strive for, which is, don't let the anxiety get a hold of you. Don't let it get on top of you, because actually, there is a back to the finding the best possible outcome, even in a shitty situation. There is an outcome that is good for you in context. And so rather than listen to the what might not happen, turn the dial and say, well, actually, how can I turn it? How can I get my way out of this, and how can I achieve something that's better for me in the long run? However, I may not choose that thing, but in a different circumstance. But here I am, and it's the acceptance of that. Again, I'm talking to you as if this is like I'm a guru, and
I
all
get
of this.
it, yeah.
See, this is through many dark nights and many that was close, and all the anxiety and the realization that comes with that. But I'm firmly cut from the cloth that says there is nothing to fear but fear itself, and in actual fact, don't let it beat you. Turn around and face it. And often what seems like a tsunami turns out to be a drizzle on your head, and it's not as bad as you think it is. Again, in context, that sounds very easy to say. I'm fully mindful of that. I think again, having people around you and good people around you and good voices around you at moments of doubt and pain. If you're having a dark night of the soul, have it. on the other side of it, there is sun. And so keep going, don't stop.
Completely. And I know you've mentioned there that it is easy to say these things, but it is easy to get the words out here, but you
Yeah,
have to hear them and you have to take them in the moment
yeah,
when something arises that might make you think like, okay, I have to take a moment to sit here and figure out what the priorities are. Whereas before, if a moment hadn't come up to show you where you're not free, maybe you wouldn't take the time before you just say you start moving, you go into robot mode and say, I have to do this. But then
yeah,
sitting back, taking the time and saying, I need to prioritize. But one of the things I really want to dive into there is that you mentioned before you had a previous nursing experience and you saw
yeah,
the horrors, I suppose, that a lot of people went through. And you
yeah.
yourself went through horrors and had to climb back. Was there ever a moment where you kind of thought, I don't know if I'm going to make it back to where I was before this?
Regularly, and particularly at the start, I kind of went from, if you take that context of me having the collaterals and maybe being tired, but I was running through airports, literally running through airports, going, oh, I'm late, and chasing my tail, and I was dealing with hedge funds and big money and all of that good stuff, right? And so I literally went from that. A week later, I got discharged from hospital, and the physio came to see me and he said, look, here's what I want you to do. I want you to walk. And when you have the heart attack, you're invited to go to cardiac rehab, but you're in the system. You've got to wait for that invitation to come through. And the cardiac rehab is a great system, but effectively it's them bringing you in. They connect you up to monitors whilst you begin to exercise. But from the point of discharge, that can be 6 weeks before you can just get an appointment, and slot into the system. So the physio was kind of giving me some instruction as to when I went home, what should I do? And he's kind of saying, well, here's what I want you to do. I want you to walk 5 minutes for the first week. I want you to walk 5 minutes every day. This is not arrogance. This was not me being, oh, no bother to me. I went from being able to do that like a week beforehand going, I was like, man,
No problem.
what? Fine. Not a high rocks. What are you talking about? Like, what do you mean, crazy fool? And so, I came home that first day, and where I live, there's a bus stop. I was like 100 meters from the door, So I set myself the target, going, well, day one, here we go, get this done. I'll walk to the bus stop. And I didn't make it halfway. I had to sit down and I short breath. And I was like, oh my God. And what I'll say is that the fear that invoked in me, it was tangible. By the time I got home, don't get me wrong, I kind of leaves with me, and so we kind of took our time and got back, and it was fine. But I kind of sat down and I was going, whoa, how did this happen? When did this become reality? And having a very acute sense that, number one, this is not going to, I cannot let this be the reality. I have to do something about this. I'm not ready for this to be the definition of me as I move forward, or as I end it. This cannot be the case. But that is filled with doubt and pain, and that is filled with questions, and I'm sure every listener will be aware of the 3 a.m. wake up and the nobody else there except yourself, and no other voice in your head except yours, and it seems louder at that time of the morning, and it seems so acute, and I wish I could explain this. I really do. In many ways I wish I could bottle it, right, and point people towards it and say, this is what that is. Those emotions maybe points to my background and my early experiences of just a difficult kind of upbringing, which was a similar experience going, this is not how it's going to be. I'm going to make sure this is different, and I'm going to plow on and get my head down and get it done. In fact, I had a very strong sense of I will work. I can do this. Now, what I will say is that I had a lot of people around me then who were saying, "Yes, you can. You got to be careful. You got to do it in a structured way. You got to right? Not exactly that. Don't do high rocks. What are you talking about? Don't even say high rocks in case it invokes a heart attack, right? It's quite possible, right? Go slow, but yes, it's achievable. And I think that's where the healthcare professional piece of any condition, chronic or acute, becomes vital, because they set the boundary, they set the tone. Yes, you can do that, but here's what you have to do to achieve that. Or in some circumstances, don't do that. Avoid that. Find another way to do something, or find an alternative, but don't do that. And that becomes vitally important. And I had a profound determination, and I mean that honestly, like profound, not in a bad way, but there were some people around me who were kind of going, but this is what you need to do, and this is what you need to do. And I was like, man, if I do that, I'm on the heap. I'm on the done. I'm finished. Check me out. And so but again, their intention was good, and they were doing it from a place of trying to protect and help, but I had this profound, overwhelming determination to say, no, I will make this better. And I'm joking about Connell in the sense, Connell is Mr. High Rocks in the room, and but I think it's okay, and I think it's necessary to have ambitious goals, we'll say, or things that you want to achieve, because otherwise, number one, who are you if you're not thinking big? Who do you want to be? And this is all in context. Define big in that sense. But I thrive in that environment. I thrive on having a thing to do, and I love the structure that comes with that. And I love the structure that I have to apply and the discipline that applies to it. I did it for years in business, and as I say, it killed me in the end. But the mindset's no less. It's no different to that. It's still the same thought process. It's still the same self coaching in a way. It's just coaching about a different thing and about a different outcome. And I think for me that's the important piece, is that whilst I was scared and I was anxious, I never really lost faith that I could do it, or that it was possible to do. I got caught in cul-de-sacs sometimes and went, oh, wait, I made a mistake, because for me, it was the gym. As I got back into the gym, it was slow, but back to the wife and hard to kill. I did crash my motorbike a number of years ago and lost my kneecap. And so that affected my training and my ability to train. But again, you adapt and you overcome its context, and you just find a way around. And again, it's not about comparing yourself to other people in terms of your training and saying, well, everybody else is doing that thing, I should do that. And if I don't do that, I'm not as good, fit, strong, or whatever as they are. That's nonsense, man. That's just nonsense. You do what you do for you, and your level of fitness is determined by your ability to respond to that. So
Completely.
determination and clarity is important in those situations.
Yeah, definitely. Like comparison is the thief of joy, and if you're constantly comparing yourself to others, you're never going to be happy. So first of all, that's the problem, no matter what, and that will guide all the other problems that come with it. But I just want to circle back to what you mentioned when you went for the walk, because I did something very similar. The first days after surgery, or after any issue that may arise, will show you what the level you're at. And I know after my surgery, I came home and I was thinking, I need to get outside, I need to get out of the house. I went for a walk thinking I'd be able to walk down to this gate, down the road and back. I fell over a gate, and I had to ring my brother to come down the car to pick me up. And as men, even though we might be filled with bullets, we can still think we're bulletproof for some reason.
For sure.
We walk out that out that door thinking, I'll be fine. But the wake up call comes and you realize, oh shit, there's work that needs to be done here.
100%.
But as you said there about, having the goals and the ambition, goals and ambition is purpose. And once you have purpose to get yourself back out of the hole that these health issues can put us into, absolutely, and having full faith in yourself that you're going to bring yourself back. I know I'm going to quote Jim Carrey, I think it was said it, and he said, hope is a beggar that walks through flames. No, hope is a beggar. Anyway, faith is someone who jumps through the flames. I'm completely fucking that up. But anyway.
But the point is,
I'm saying faith is good.
Believe.
Yeah.
But I think that's couldn't be more apt. And it's about belief, but it's also about desire. It's about one has to feed the other. I want to get to that place, right? I believe that I can. And then there's the last piece, which is now I need to teach myself or learn or ask or be taught how to do that thing. And I think if you have those three elements and those three ingredients, you will make a success pie, and it will look good at the end of it. But I think you need those ingredients, particularly when it comes to health, and particularly when it comes to not limitation, but when it comes to having to factor a condition in or a recovery or surgery or whatever the case may be. And maybe it's context as well. In ICU, you had lots of people who maybe left ICU in their acute phase, but had a long journey ahead of them, of rehab, whatever that looked like. Sometimes it's learning to walk again. Sometimes it was head injuries and adapting, whatever the case may be. A multitude of different things. But again, there is a satisfaction to be had about the opportunity to do it. Now, you have to look after your basics. You have to have money. You have to be in the world. You have to be able to work or earn money and do all those bits. And so if you apply a Maslow's hierarchy of needs to it, you got to look after the baseline. And sometimes health brings you right down to that lower tier where it's right down to the basics. It's diet, it's food. In your instance, it's learning how to adapt to a scenario that has a profound impact on your body. And so I think, if I'm honest with you, Johnny, and I mean this honestly, this is to be sincere. That's why I think your story and the way you tell your story is so inspiring, because here you are, facing and sharing all of those deepest, darkest kind of moments and fears. But actually, the story that emerges at the end of that is that it's hopeful, it's achievable, and ultimately it's okay. And I think again, back to the easy thing to say, and easy in retrospect to look back over the last 3 years and go, yeah, hey, this is where I ended up when it was a breeze. Quite the opposite. Lots of things to wrestle with and lots of demons to wrestle with even as you do that. But ultimately rewarding to do it, Johnny, and ultimately worth the effort. And I think anybody facing any challenge like that, whether it's acute, in my instance, heart attack, and how you adapt to it, or living with a chronic condition and having to adapt and overcome, the effort is worth it, because actually there is a day when you do realize, you go, actually, I'm okay. I'm fine. I've landed in whatever the context is. I've got through it and I'm okay, and I can build from here. And actually my experience now can be fulfilling again and can be full again. And actually it's been worth all the effort. And I think keeping that in mind, even if that's just a belief, to your point, it has to be there. Otherwise, man, you lie down, you won't get up again, and that will be the end of it.
The fight will be taken out of you. And I know I mentioned there about hope being a beggar, but hope is the first step of the ladder to have faith in yourself, because you can lose faith so easily when you're lying in that hospital bed thinking the why me's, all these problems you can't see out of the fog. But when you have hope and like literally cling on to hope as the step that's going to get you back out on your feet. And thank you very much for saying that. I really appreciate it, because there have been times in my life when I lost hope, I lost faith, I lost everything. But
Sure.
I know you would probably say the same yourself. Being open and honest with the people around you, what's going on in your mind and the situation where you're at, gives them power to help you. You can't be helped unless you open your mouth and share what's going on inside. That's where the true strength in the village comes from, and having the people around you and giving them the opportunity to be there for you.
Well, you're right, and I think not to genderize it in that sense, but I think you're right in that men don't do that as well, or certainly the culture has been that men don't do that, and you're bulletproof with 10 bullets in you. So it won't happen to me, and there is that mentality that it won't happen to me. My wife is a psychologist, and I suppose that's a really fortuitous thing, because even if I wanted to be male about it, there's no chance. Talk to me, tell me what's going on immediately. I'm a psychologist, tell me things, right? But it is important as well, because, as an island, however we act as though sometimes we might be, no man is an island. And Lee had her own struggles to go through as a consequence of my experience and my heart attack. I put it this way, and I mean this sincerely, and I'm acutely aware of it as well. I had a heart attack, but in many ways, Lee's heart was broken that day as well, because that has an impact on her dreams, on her aspirations and her expectations as to how life will be, and all the fear that comes with that. And so, it isn't just about my healing. Can I talk about my issues? Because I was also conscious of the fact that there was a trauma there for Lee. I said to you, all of the experiences that I had in terms of the heart attack and, arresting and paddles and all of that, it happened to somebody else, in the sense that I'm not aware of it. It was over there somewhere. Lee, however, lived through all of that and experienced all of that. And so, I think you have to make time for the people who are around you as well to share their fears, because you can sometimes again get caught in the fact that this happened to me and it's my heart attack and God, it's really bad. Actually, look at the people that are around you and the kids. And I remember actually that morning, the youngest girl, Layla, coming up the stairs, and I swear I felt this, and I was so aware of it, even though I was a kind of bit jaded and a bit faded and not in the best place. But immediately, this was back at the morning of the heart attack, in the house before the ambulance had arrived, and I'd kind of come round, and obviously, there was a bit of fear and a bit of upset in the house and fear, right? But I remember Layla coming upstairs, and I could see tears in her eyes, and I was so aware of lying on the floor, unable to lift my head, and going, how the fuck did I find myself here? Look at the child. Look at this child, and how the fuck did you find yourself here? And so, an experience like that, it happens to you. It's happened to your body. It's your health in that sense, but it happens to all the people around you as well. And so, I think remembering that sometimes, number one, there's a communal piece in that, because then you actually are not as alone as you might imagine yourself to be, or as much as you tell yourself you are. It happens to all the people around you, and so making space for it and talking about it, and it has become a bit of a joke now. And she's like, "God, you're hard to keep alive." No, love, I'm hard to kill. That's a joke with a jag. But when you get under under the joke of that, actually there is a piece. She's like, "Listen, mind yourself. Let's do this well. Let's protect ourselves and each other." And that's a very, very powerful message to have. And I do mean this honestly. When you strip everything else away, when you strip jobs away, when you strip titles away, or roles or masks or any of that kind of stuff, all that we have behind our eyes is how we feel and who we feel it for. So protecting that and living that and experiencing that and allowing your love to be manifest, and allowing your regard and your care and your experiences to be shared. Really, when you think about it, what else is there, man? But what else is there? That's all we have. And so protect that above all else.
That's absolutely beautiful, because there is definitely a weight underneath those words, and the weight that she's had to carry from the experience. It's beautiful to be able to, as she has the background of psychologist, you're both well able to sit in there and have the conversations and have the open talks, because once you get the words out, there's no hiding behind the words when they come out. But you can both see what the other person is feeling and understand where they're coming from in these situations. I just want to dive into, you're unbelievably good at elocuting everything that has gone on. How would you say that you're the same man as you were before the experience, or now are you completely different? What have you taken from it?
I think externally, on the surface, apart from obviously being a hybrid athlete now, that's
Let's go.
massively changed. But aside from that, externally, if you're looking out, same man, same person, same identity. I am who I am in that sense. But what's changed is the inside. But what's changed is I think this is maybe difficult to grasp, but what's changed is my relationship with myself. I think is really what the fundamental change is. So it'd be hard for somebody to put their finger on it necessarily and kind of go, well, that's changed or whatever, because I think it's the relationship that I have with myself, and I've physically changed what I do and where I do it at. I'm at home a lot more. The balance is much better now than it needed to be. That's a simple lesson. There's no other way of getting around that. And it just needed to be better. But my relationship with myself is better now. And that's changed. And I feel more in touch. I feel more connected to myself, however intangible that might sound. But I more instinctively am aware now of what I should do. Beforehand, I might have wrung my hands a little bit and kind of went, should I do that or should I do that? Or God, what does that mean? And, and that often that was guided by work and led by work. But now instinctively, I have a much more attuned sense of going, well, I'm definitely not doing that. No, say no. And I'm better at saying no. And it's not just about that. It's not just about learning to say no, but it's about learning what to let go. And what's important, but that's not important anymore. Genuinely, truthful story. More because I thought I was going to be bored. I in the middle of the heart attack or recovery from the heart attack, I set up an organization in Dubai, and we were kind of tasked with delivering healthcare projects, developing countries. Long story short, South Sudan was one that we were awarded, and I kind of went to South Sudan, and again back to Lee. She's like, you go to South Sudan. I'm like, oh, you'll have malaria and you know what I mean? You get shot and what the hell?
This man has a death wish.
You're like, what the hell? Right? And so, but again, part of that was the intellectual challenge that I kind of need as well. It's a thing that is what it is. But very quickly, that organization grew quite fast, and it had the potential to become a really, really big roller coaster of a thing. And it would have meant I'd had to be in Dubai, and I had to be in Africa, and I'd had to be all over the place. The minute I kind of had the awareness, I went from going, this will be quite nice, and I gave myself a nice title. I called myself the executive chairman, and in my view, that meant I didn't have to do anything. But of course, that didn't turn out to be the case. I did. But very quickly, it became a case of, no. I don't want to get back into the cycle of being as busy as I was on another continent now. Thank you very much. Like, have you changed? Yes, I'm not in America anymore. I am, however, in Africa. That's not changed. And so I'm very comfortable with letting that go, and very comfortable with saying, actually proud of it. Don't get me wrong, and delighted I did it. And again, from a perspective point of view, I went to South Sudan and spent some time there. And I honestly, Johnny, I thought I'd lived. I thought I'd seen the world. I thought I was a man of the world until I went there and was like, this is horrendous. It's the worst I've ever seen. And here's human beings like living the worst possible life you can imagine. If you think of the worst conditions you can possibly muster in your head, they're there. And so again, a great leveler and a great perspective. But for me, actually, what's changed is that I'm very, very happy to be at home, very happy to get the balance right and get the story right, and spend the time where it needs to be spent. And that's a huge change from what I used to do and where I used to do it and how I used to do it. And again, post the heart attack, I retired for a fortnight. It's like I'm retired. Yeah, I'm retired. And then, what have you done? Dubai. Oh, okay. South Sudan. Okay, you've done that. Okay. Retirements. What about playing golf?
Retirement's overrated, absolutely.
Yeah, for sure. Clearly.
Definitely that swings back to what we mentioned earlier about, taking the time to prioritize, and I suppose in a sense compartmentalize it as well so that you can prioritize. And it's such a powerful thing to say that you improve the relationship with self, because a lot of the time we're living for our interactions with other people, and we don't take the moment to go inside and say, right, what's going on here? And sometimes we can, and we have an idea, and then something will crop up and show us like, oh, I had no idea who I was or how I behaved to myself and treated myself. So it's a very, very powerful thing to say. Now, I would also say that you definitely have some self-harm tendencies, judging by the PT you chose.
That's right. Shane Painsworth.
Yes, Shay Painsworth. That just kind of brings me on to my next question. You made a decision to not only get better and get back on your feet, you decided to get better. So could you dive into your fitness journey over the last while for us?
Yeah, sure. Fitness at various points in my life had actually been quite important. I quite enjoyed it, but I genuinely mean I'd fall into that cliche where I had kind of got into the corporate world, and I was traveling a lot, and big deals, acquisitions. I did mergers and acquisitions for a long period of time, and then helped set up a company which we sold, and then went to the NASDAQ, all that kind of good stuff. And you know, it is a cliche. It literally became a cliche, and I was overweight, and I was vaping, and I told myself I was very healthy because I smoked like a trooper, and then I stopped and I vaped more than I ever smoked. I was like, but it's good. I mean, vaping, it's fine.
Tastes like food. It's fine. Yeah.
It's fine. It's blueberry. What are you talking about? It's absolutely fine. I suppose I'd had the advantage of previous and prior in a different kind of stage of life where fitness was quite good, and I quite enjoyed it, and all the benefits that come with that from a bodily point of view, but also a kind of headspace point of view, and that feeling of wellness and strength. I quite like being strong, right? That's what that I kind of respond to. So big heavy weights, and I just like it. I just like feeling strong. And so I guess one of the goals then post heart attack was, compared to the first day of I couldn't do 50 meters without, man, I'm absolutely punctured, to then this gradual kind of process. And I had joined the gym actually 4 days before I had the heart attack. So so I joined the gym on a Monday, had the heart attack that following Thursday. Hadn't nothing to do with the gym. I hadn't been in the gym. I just
The cost of the gym. Yeah.
Right. Exactly. Right. But I had an awareness, obviously, that I needed to do something. There was a gap, and I needed to fix that gap. But I suppose having done that, it was in my psyche and in my awareness to go, well, I should get back to that. And so then, what I will say is that was a very nervous process, because again, the whole point is that you don't know what your limitations are. And it felt like you could potentially be pushing a limit there that you're not really aware of. I spoke to the docs and I said, I want to do this. And they said, that's fine. And, off you go. It's very, very controlled. And I have to give credit where credit's due. The guys in the gym were very accommodating and very understanding. And, all of that helped in terms of being able to adapt and do it slowly and do it in a controlled fashion. But again, I started in the gym and very class focused. And so it's 45 minutes of HIIT. It fed into that mentality that said, this can't be my reality. I cannot accept that this is what I am and who I'm going to be, or what my experience of life is going to be. And it's back to that determination. I must, however, wherever my limit reaches, wherever I get to, I have to be better than I am now. I have to feel better than I am now, and I have to feel stronger, and I have to feel fitter. And so, I remember this. I remember this honestly. I remember going in and kind of going, man, one more burpee, and that's me. I'm going to have a heart attack. I'm going to check out. And so you're constantly testing the boundaries a little bit, but
you're learning how to trust your body again and have that confidence again to move. Yeah,
no question. And actually, it's interesting because I think my fear reaction was probably amplified, right? Because you're like, is that pain? Well, no, okay, it's actually burpees. You know what I mean? Or heavy weight.
Yeah.
Oh, actually, it's not a heart attack. It's just heavy.
It's 5 minutes with Shane Ainsworth. Yeah.
Yeah, right. And so you're learning all of that, and I actually think as well, that's a healthy thing, because as long as it's within the boundaries, as long as it's not being silly, right? It actually, your point's well met. It's about learning to trust your body again, and understand that not every twinge is the end of the world, or a bad thing is happening. It's okay, and again, environment's important, because at that time, High Rocks was becoming, I suppose, more popular, and was certainly I became aware of it, and it just seemed to be growing in popularity. And the guys in the gym that I attend, which is the Power Gym in the Dean, very, very fit individuals, very, very into that, long history of, ultra marathons and all of that kind of good stuff. And so again, you're a product sometimes of the environment that you find yourself in, and it's back to find yourself with good people and surround yourself with good people. Listen, I mean this honestly, I'm never going to break any records on a High Rocks in any shape, fashion, or form. But what a lovely goal to have, which is to do it, to train for it. It doesn't matter if it takes you 2.5 hours, 3 hours. It's irrelevant what it is, but the training and the structure and the discipline that it provides you, the different stations. I will always have a problem because my knee is I have to be very careful because I'm a dodgy northie with a dodgy knee. That sounds.
It's a whole other podcast as well.
Right, kneecap. Right, here we are. Yeah, cue the music. But again, the same mentality applies, which is adapt and overcome. Find a way around. Find what works for you and make it happen. And so, what I will say is that I did have weight to lose, and so that's as much about an end point as running 8 kilometers or pulling a sled or whatever. That has to be factored in, and so all of that helps towards that. There is an obvious benefit as you do that you get the endorphins, you get the feel good factor, and you enjoy it. Plus, there's the community element to it, and all of that's important. So I think I would love to tell you, I genuinely mean it, Judy. I would love to say that it was all my master plan, and I went back going, here's what I'll do and here's where I'll be. It didn't kind of work that way. It kind of developed as it went. But isn't that life? I think if your mind is open and you open the doors and you're prepared to walk through, that's part of the gift of life. In some ways, is that if you're prepared to take that step and walk through, who knows what you'll find on the other side? And often it's a good thing. Yeah. Sometimes it's not what you expect, but still it's a good thing. So I think the gym really helped with that, and the trainers really helped because they facilitated, and I think they were all quite nervous as well, going, don't have a heart attack now, not in my class. I don't know CPR, or maybe they would have taken it as a hey.
They're always trying to give us heart attacks, and they're completely
right.
That's the aim of the game. Yeah.
Well, yeah, like I had a guy who had a heart attack in my class one time.
They'd be bragging about it. But
right?
I completely get what you say there about fitness is essentially an individual discipline, because it's, and I know I feel like I'm all power today and everything I'm talking about, but they'd often say in the classes it's you versus you, and that is 100% what it is. And when you go to the higher order things, in another sense, Jack has often said in class before, he's like, when the final 10 seconds, like, don't let 10 seconds beat you, and that always kind of stuck with me, because in a sense it's you versus you, but it's also you versus time and how you use that time. And I think it's just something that always kind of has sat back into my mind a little bit. But one thing I just want to dive into is this: there could be someone listening to this who sees themselves a lot in everything that you've gone through, or maybe they were living a life very much like you were living beforehand. If someone themselves, they want to kind of maybe take control back in their own life like you have, or maybe dive deep into the self and understand themselves a bit more, what advice would you have for them?
I think this is important for me. This is probably the culmination of it. Genuinely, and I know how difficult this is, because had somebody said this to me prior to me having a heart attack, there is that mentality, the bulletproof mentality. It'll never happen to me, And so that's the first thing I would say is it absolutely can, and every chance that it will. If you're living a lifestyle, and you have to be honest with yourself, you're living a lifestyle that puts you at threat, or has gone too far this way, then you have to be honest. That's the first thing. Be honest with yourself above all else. Be honest with yourself. Second of all, with that honesty, then comes almost a responsibility, because if you're aware of a thing, it's nearly worse to not do anything about it then. And so, first lesson is, yes, it can happen to you. And I honestly, I was wondering, I was 47, so not old, and even in heart attack terms, not old. And I was CEO of a NASDAQ, stressful job, all of that kind of good stuff. But I was traveling, I was running around, doing my thing. Absolutely, 100% can happen to you. And if you feel vulnerable, make sure that you don't leave it to chance. All of that serendipity that happened to me that morning was just that. It was good luck, right place, right time, in a sense. And so it could have been very, very different. And so don't leave yourself so vulnerable or so far down the line that's where you find yourself. And I think the last piece of advice then is, whatever circumstance you find yourself in, health-wise, whether that's chronic, acute, or whatever the case may be, that is not the definition of you. It's not the end point. It's certainly not where you have to stop. And it's about that adage that for me, I apply and have done to my life, which is find the best possible outcome for you, whatever that may be within context. Make sure that you define the best possible outcome for you, and then be relentless in trying to achieve that. And all of that, I say that, I genuinely mean it. I say it with sincerity. I say it with a bit of passion, because if there's a culmination of my experience of this, it's that you don't have to stop. A better time or a better experience is possible. You just have to go and search for it, and you just have to go and find it. So don't lie down to it. I think, to your point, don't let the 10 seconds beat you. Don't let a circumstance beat you. Find a way around.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, the only way out is through, and you are not the circumstances. You are your reaction to the circumstances.
100%.
You are what you can make happen yourself. Shay, it's been absolutely brilliant speaking to you today, and I know I want to have you back. There's a lot more topics I'd like to dive into even further, but one last question I'd like to throw at you, and I'd love to get your perspective on it, is, what does happiness mean to you?
Now, for me, and this is a personal manifestation of it. This is how it manifests in my world. Happiness for me is, and it's better to give you a context, right? Is Sunday morning, having finished a 45-minute HIT class, at home with the kids doing whatever they're doing. I don't care what it is, whatever they're doing, but we're interacting and we're farting about, right? I'm cooking something for my wife, and I've got work tomorrow. And honestly, and I mean this honestly, it's not more complicated than that, man. It's that, for me, is now the definition of the perfect scenario. And if I could manifest that every single day, I would be happy. And I think, to contextualize that, to maybe give it a frame, work. It's about family. It's about self and yourself within that. And honestly, it's about the simple things in life. I've been at the pinnacle of a career. I've made a lot of money and lost a lot of money as well. And none of that is relevant. It's all nonsense. It's all vanity to a point. Simple things are the things for me that to strive for. And I can't think of a better way to spend a day than that. And that's what I strive for now.
That is absolutely beautiful, because that is working towards a goal of betterment. You have your HIT class in the morning. We're going to have to get Power to sponsor this episode, don't you? You have your HIT class in the morning, but then you have the presence and the knowledge to know you're exactly where you want to be afterwards, with your family, the close connection, and knowing what's true and real for you. So, Shay, it has been my pleasure to speak to you today. I really appreciate your time.
Johnny, absolute pleasure, and I genuinely mean it. Don't let it pass. This is an inspirational kind of piece that you're doing, and I really do genuinely have such admiration for it. So, very delighted to contribute any way I can, buddy, and thanks for the chance.
Massive thank you, Shay, for coming on and sharing his story so openly. If you enjoyed today's episode, I'd really appreciate it if you could leave a rating, review. It all genuinely helps more people discover these conversations, and helps me continue growing podcasts. Next week's episode is with Lorraine from the stoma sportwear brand Comfys. The idea for Comfys came from Lorraine's own father's experience with the stoma. IBD has unfortunately been a big part of her family's life, and she shares her experience as a mother caring for a young son with Crohn's disease. See you next week.